Hello, and welcome to Career Connection Chat, where you state the career and we make the connection. As always, I'm your host, Seth Lawrence, Delaware Military Academy class of 2022. Love saying that. And welcome to Season 1, Military Careers and Life. Today with us we have Captain John Arroyo, United States Army Green Beret, and survivor of the 2014 Fort Hood shooting in Texas. He's also an author of Attacked at Home, a Green Beret survival story of the Fort Hood shooting. His story is well known throughout the entire United States military community and serves as a beacon of hope to people, including the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs Staff, General Mark A. Milley. Why have me tell the story when John can tell you himself? Stay tuned.
On April 2nd of 2014, there was 19 of us shot on a military base. I hear shots fired and I'm kind of inquisitive because although I was behind security, I'm a former Green Beret. I've been to combat 3 times. I've chased bad guys. I've done those things that you would expect a Green Beret to do. And I begin to discount what I heard. And then a car pulls up in front of me and I see the car and I acknowledge the vehicle. I acknowledge the individual in the vehicle. But I was in a parking lot. Again, like today, we can easily discount things that are dangerous, right? And I went like this, and the next shot I heard ripped through my throat. On that day, a .45 caliber severed my jugular vein, went through my voice box, you hear me talking to you? And into my right shoulder. And I'm laying there, and I know I only have seconds to live. And right then I began to think about my wife. I began to think about my children. And I had an encounter with Jesus. It was right there on the ground in Killeen, Texas, on Fort Hood, that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob met me on the ground. Amen. And he audibly spoke to me. And I grabbed onto my throat. And I go walking, and I see one soldier walking towards me, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, on a base that holds about 30,000 troops, but only one soldier's walking towards me. And I'm trying to get to him, and I'm stumbling, and he gets 10 feet in front of me, and he stops, and he's looking around like this, and it's a soldier that just shot me. We meet face to face. And Jesus blinded him.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Season 1, Episode 7. With me today is Captain John Arroyo, United States Army Green Beret, retired. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing good, Seth. How are you doing? You look suited and booted, man. You look good.
Thank you. I'm feeling great. Today's been a pretty good day so far. I'm very happy. It's been what they say, today is the day the Lord has made. I'll rejoice and be glad in it, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So hard charging, getting the game. I'm really excited about the weekend. I'm ready to go. But let's start off with, could you explain who you are and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, my name is John Arroyo, as you said. I'm Army captain, retired. I started out in the military as a young 88 mic truck driver. That's what they're called. You know, they say transportation services. You know, that's what the recruiters say. But it's just, you're a truck driver. You know. But all my family back home were truck drivers, all the men in my family. And so you said, how did you get to where you're at? Well, I became an Army truck driver because when I wasn't in the Army, I needed discipline in my life. And at 7th grade, I got jumped into a gang in Los Angeles. By 9th grade, I was a teenage father. And by 12th grade, I was doing methamphetamines. I look at you in your uniform, and I'm so proud. I really wish that I would have really taken advantage of what was out there. And man, I just look at you and I'm so happy that you're a leader leading from the front, because I really wish I would have took advantage of those opportunities, but I really didn't. I was a young punk, thought I was cool, wanted to be funny. And, I listened to your stories, and you're, applying for Naval Academies. And I mean, just so many things that I just like, wow, like you're doing things right now. I'm just saying you're doing things right now that it took me 20, 30 years to even get close to doing. And man, I just want to say I'm so proud of you. So anyways, I got into gangs, got into trouble, was a young father. And my family said, you need to get out of here. You'll be a loser the rest of your life. So I went to the Army recruiter. I failed the entry exam the first time. Look at you, you're super smart guy. I failed the ASVAB. I had to go back 6 months later and took it. It became an Army truck driver in the 82nd Airborne Division, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Did that for several years. Then I became an Army Green Beret, did three combat tours, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq. And then I transitioned through the active duty Green to Gold program. And then I became a medical service corps officer. I became a commissioned officer, and then finished out my career in 2018. So that's 20 years.
So what characteristics would make a good person in that career field in the Army Green Berets and what you do now?
Well, I would say, there's a transformational leader, right? So as a Green Beret, the characteristics that you need as a Green Beret is, one, you need to be a team player. You need to have character. You need to have integrity. You need to be a self-starter, right? So as a Green Beret, it's, we've always had the saying, like, there's big boy rules. Nobody's going to tell you to go do your job. It's either you do your job, or we're going to put your bags outside in the hallway. And you can do that in a specialized community. Where you're in the regular Army, you got to deal with people that don't do their jobs. But in a special ops community where there's a bunch of meat eaters, you better be a self-starter. You better be able to do your job. You better have integrity. Know your job, know it well. Be a master of your craft. If your job as a Green Beret is, there's 4 skills. There's communications, weapons, medical, and engineer. And then there's several additional, which is like our intel, our team sergeant, warrant officer. But the 4 main are those that I initially mentioned off. And you have to be a master of your craft. And so those are some of the things, the characteristics. And I would say integrity is one of the biggest things, man. You know what I mean? Because you're going to be put in a lot of places, and you're going to go a lot of places, and you're going to be put in different scenarios, and you have to be able to tell the truth. Commanders and senior non-commissioned officers can't make decisions if their soldiers don't tell them the truth. They can't make the right decisions.
Absolutely. And so what were some of the favorite things you did as a Green Beret?
Training with my team, that was a big thing. I loved training with my team. One time my team sergeant, early on as a Green Beret, I was a rookie, man. I was green behind my ears, brother. I was a rookie. I went from going to, truck driver land. I'm going to pick this up. So I went from truck driver land to being one of the most elite commandos in the world. And one day our team sergeant says, "Hey, we're gonna go in Afghanistan." This is in Afghanistan. He says, "We're gonna go confirm or deny routes." Really, what he was saying is, I'm gonna walk you guys for 5 days up and down mountains. And he says, "I want it to suck. I want you guys to remember the suck." And I was like, man, those are the things I remember, though. I remember the camaraderie. I remember the teamwork. I remember training, going to shooting schools and things like that. And it brought us as a family. We became a family through sometimes some of the things we suffered, the trials that we went through. I wouldn't say we suffered, but the trials that we went through, those were the things that made us grow as a family, right? Like we may fight as brothers in the team, have little arguments, but don't let somebody else try to fight with my brother. Like we'd pounce on them. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's pretty cool, like the wolf pack mentality. I think that's something I've heard many, many times. And I that's always something I admire about the military and the Army, and especially Special Forces. They are quite a bond. They're quite a bond. They're like a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I think it's really awesome. But I gotta ask, did you have anything that was not really your favorite? Like, what was your least favorite thing you had to do in the Army?
Oh, well, in the Army, so something that we had to do over and over as a Green Beret and as a truck driver, we would always have to do accountability of our equipment. And so, man, that is just a gruesome task. You know, commanders, they're signed for equipment, and you have to do inventories every month. So you got to lay out all your equipment. You got to get accountability. So one of the things that I hated most was like doing inventory every month, you know, and that it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. The other thing I didn't like is when I went to selection to be an Army Green Beret. That wasn't fun. Like, it's not intended to be fun. It's intended to see if you got what it takes. And man, and let me tell you something. You know, I just mentioned it earlier, Seth, that I failed the entry exam into the military. I went back. I scored only a 31. I mean, I made it into the military by the skin of my teeth, man. And then I get into being at selection to be a Green Beret, and I make it all the way to the end. And they tell me that, you know what? We don't think academically you're going to make it in our qualification course. You know, that was hard. I had a lot of failure in my life, but I tell you, the challenging thing that I had to do is I went back to selection for a second time. And I tell you what, that sucked. That I went back, but you know what? Let me say something. I want your cadets to hear this. I made it. I went to selection a second time and I got selected because I didn't quit. Right. So although they told me, hey, there'll be a challenge, one of the things that I hated the most was having to go back to selection because I knew what was coming. It wasn't fun, but I wasn't gonna quit.
Awesome. And I think especially right now, the philosophy of perseverance is something our cadets really need right now. And so that brings us actually to our next question. So what is your biggest motivation in life?
My relationship with Jesus Christ. That's my motivation. That is the foundation of who I am. My faith is the foundation of who I am. And then right above that is my family. You know, well, I'll say this, because a lot of times people, they don't ever put themselves in the equation. So at the very foundation, the motivation of who I am is my relationship with Christ. The second thing is me, because without me, there is no family. There is no relationships beyond that. So I have to be able to invest in myself. I have to be able to, you know, enjoy things, you know, take care of my body, take care of myself, things like that. So if I'm spiritually, emotionally, mentally intact, then guess what? Then that means I'm an asset to society. That means I'm a good father. I'm a good man. I'm a good husband. I'm a good provider. So I would say the foundation and the motivation, what motivates me is my relationship in my faith with Christ. The second thing is, one, making sure that I'm physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually sound and strong. That means reading my Bible, getting up, studying the word, spending time, worship, and then relaxing, resting, putting my phone away, doing those things, right? Spending time with my wife. Then we go on to the family dynamic, right? Spending time with my wife, enjoying each other with my family, and then going on to everything else, which is my job, ministry, things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, as a fellow Christian man, a fellow godly man, in fact, we met at my church. Well, my former church, I go to a different church now, but we met at my church, and you had a great message there, and I think that's how we actually started talking. So I think one of the things that I think I would like you to talk about is your story. So you wrote a book, one of my favorite books, Attack the Home, about where you talk about your experiences in the 2014 Fort Hood shooting. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I sure will. When I became an officer, my first assignment was Fort Hood, Texas. I had spent 15 years as an enlisted soldier on Fort Bragg. And some of that time on Fort Bragg was also transitioning to college and going to the Green to Gold program. And then when I graduated college, I said, hey, you know what, send me somewhere else. I've been on Fort Bragg 15 years. I know what's going to happen. You're going to send me back to the 82nd Airborne. And I was like, you know what, I want to try somewhere else. I'd never been in another duty station. So I accepted Fort Hood, Texas. I show up there. It's November 2013. And my wife and I are just kind of getting settled. So now we'll fast forward to April 2nd of 2014. Now we've been there about 5 months or so. And it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm getting out of my car and I shut the door and I hear shots fired. Like I'm on base in the 1st Medical Brigade headquarters parking lot, you know, but I'm on base. I don't think that there's a lot of danger. You know, I'm like, well, I mean, there's no one's coming after me. I mean, I'm behind security, right? When I drove to work this morning, someone checked my ID card, and that guy had a badge and a gun and body armor. So I'm behind that guy. I'm safe. Anyway, something just told me still like, man, that just sounded very real. And so I was very inquisitive. So I'm looking towards like my 1 o'clock, and a car pulls up in front of me, and I see the car, see the individual, and but I turned my head back to where I heard the shots fired, and the next shot I heard ripped through my throat. As you said, I took a 45 caliber through my throat, severed my jugular vein, went through my voice box, and traveled into my right shoulder. And the shooter, so what I was hearing, what alerted me when I was looking at the shots fired at my 1 o'clock was actually the driver. When he was coming down the road, he was shooting at everybody he saw. That's when I heard the shots fired. And then he pulls up in front of me, but I don't think I'm in danger. So I turn my head like this, and then he shoots me point blank in the throat. He drives off. And, you know, I want your cadets to hear this. I'm not saying that people don't live after being shot in the throat with a 45, but I haven't met him. Right. So he drives off. I turn, I walk back towards my car, and I just fall on the ground, and I'm bleeding out. My life is pouring out. And, you know, Seth, I just want to say something, because I think this is important for your cadets to understand, is in that moment when my life was pouring out, when I felt I only had seconds to live, I wasn't worried about Facebook. I wasn't worried about text messages. I wasn't worried about emails. All I worried about is what mattered most. And you know what, though? What mattered most were the people that I was sacrificing the most. See, I sacrificed my family, my kids when they were young. I told them that I was going to, you know, I'm working to give you this great career, and I'm going to make more money. And man, they didn't care about all those things. They didn't care about all the materialism that the world says, if you have this, then you're somebody, right? That's what I was going after. I was going after the titles. I was going after people patting me on the back, the tabs on the shoulders, the badges on my chest. Man, I was going after those things. But you know what? When I was dying on the ground, none of that mattered. None of it. All I cared about was my family, my children, my wife. And then I hear this audible voice, John, get up or your wife is going to die. Well, Seth, I thought I was talking to myself. So I shrugged it off. And then once again, I hear it again. John, get up or your wife is going to die. I know now that Jesus was audibly speaking to me in the moment of despair. You know, right now, there's a lot of people, they're looking around and they're wondering, where's God? Is there a God? I mean, because there's so much going on in our world right now. There can't be a God. That's what it was like for me on the ground as my life is pouring out. People were saying, how could this be happening again? Now this is a second mass shooting on the military base Fort Hood, not the first. Now it's the second. People are dying. You know, just breaking news. But you know what, Seth? You know where God was? He was speaking to me. I just said it. He was in the midst of the fire. He was in the midst of the chaos. He was speaking to me audibly in my ear, telling me to get up, live. Your wife needs you. Your family needs you. Essentially, what he was telling me was, John, get up or your wife is going to take her life. See, here's what happened, Seth. I hear God audibly tell me to get up or my wife will die, because just prior to me being shot, when we transitioned to Fort Hood, so I'm shot in April, but in September, my wife loses both her parents 9 days apart. 2 years before that, she loses her brother in a hunting accident. So she loses her brother, her mother, her father. 6 months later, I'm on the ground bleeding out. We were on Fort Bragg for 15 years. Now we're in Fort Hood. We only been there for 5 months. All of our friends, all of our structure, nowhere around us. So essentially what God was saying is, get up, man, or your wife is going to take her life. And you know, it's easy. It was easy for me to stay on the ground, Seth. It was easy for me to stay on the ground. It was easier for me to just be like, God, don't you see I'm bleeding out? How could you tell me to get up? Right now, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of cadets probably, and they're saying, I'm struggling. I'm suffering. I mean, you don't understand what I'm going through. I could have said that to God. God, how could you tell me to get up? Didn't you? Don't you see that I'm bleeding out? But I didn't. He said, get up, and I listened. I got up, I grabbed onto my throat, I go walking, I'm holding on, I'm stumbling. I don't know if I have 1 step or 5 steps left. There's a soldier walking towards me. I'm trying to get to him. I know that once I reach this guy, he's gonna save me. This soldier and I start getting close to each other, and I stop in my tracks, and he's like this, and I realize I'm standing in front of the man that just shot me. And I'm like, oh man, he looks at me, looks through me, looks to the left and right. And the only thing I could say, Seth, is that God blinded him because he didn't see me. He turned, walked away from me, shot 3 more people. He walks in a building, I move away. I could hear him shooting in there. Some soldiers see me. They said it looked like I had a red scarf flapping in the wind. It was a blood squirting out of my neck. That's what told them that I was injured. They get me in the back of a truck. One of the guys, they get me over to the hospital over in Brooke Army Medical Center. A doc has enough sense to put a tube in my throat because my airways are closing. And so they're rushing me to the elevator. The elevator doors open and 2 doctors come running out, and it's the ear, nose, and throat surgeons. Everything I needed was exactly where it needed to be. They get my wife to see me. She said, your head was so swollen, your tongue wouldn't even fit back in your mouth. I'm shot Wednesday. So Thursday, I come out of my 2nd surgery, and they say he'll be in a medically induced coma until Saturday. And so my wife walks away from the doctors on Thursday when they tell her I'll be in a medically induced coma, right? Till Saturday. She walks up to me, grabs my hand to tell me she loves me, and I wake up. But here's what your cadets need to know. I'm here. I'm the guy that had his throat nearly blown out, but yet I'm the one here encouraging you. Why? Because I listened to God's voice when he said, get up. And you know what? I listened to his voice the next day when life sucked. I listened to it the following week when I saw no improvement, when I was fighting for my life, when I didn't know whether my career was going to be over, this illustrious career that I thought I had created, right? I thought I created this illustrious career, and I was going to go be this Fortune 500 guru, and everybody was going to fight to hire me on their staff, right? All of that was gone. All of that was gone. And you know what I did? Instead of killing myself, instead of beating my wife, instead of beating my children, you know what I did? I just kept getting up. I went off the very last word that God gave me. And you know what I think? I think as a Green Beret, why did I go back to selection a 2nd time? Why did I go back to the recruiter? Because God had a plan for my life, and I had to just keep getting up. So I'm here to tell those cadets to just keep getting up, because one day I'm going to watch them on a podcast as they're telling me that they're Colonel so-and-so or General so-and-so, all because one day they listened to this guy tell them to get up through Jesus Christ.
I mean, amen. And I mean, the story, I mean, your story is just truly motivational. I mean, I talk about your story all the time to people. You're like whenever I'm talking about perseverance, I'm trying to motivate someone. I'm like, hey, I know this guy who should not be alive today, but through the grace and power of the Almighty God, he is. And I let them know, I let them know there is a way. There is always this too. So for when people are going through things, I say, this too shall pass, because God's always with you. I mean, if I'm quoting the Bible verse right, God says, be still and know that I'm God. And I always take that verse as, God's got you. God got you. No matter what it is, he's in control at all times. That's why people say, Jesus, take the wheel, because they know God. God's got the back. God has done this for a while. He's pretty professional when it comes to taking care of people. I mean, that's
been doing it a long time. Yeah.
And I love your story, and it makes me motivated. It makes me motivated. It makes me know that yes, there is a God, and you're living proof. Because I know people are like, well, if God's real, why are these things happening? Or if God's real, why does he let this stuff happen? If God's real, X, Y, and Z, or I don't think God is real, there's no signs of it. You're a living proof that there is a God. You're a living proof that there is an almighty, powerful God. And I appreciate everything you do. And I appreciate what God's done in your life. And I appreciate what you do now, because I know you go around to different churches and tell your stories as well as you did into mine. So I do really admire you, sir. Um, yeah, and now this program is about mentorship, specifically connecting people with mentors and potential mentorees, specifically with careers and leadership and life and all that. So I gotta, who was your mentor, and like, what was the best lesson they taught you?
Well, I've had several, right? So, like you'll find if you're doing it right, you'll find some mentors during different phases of your life, right? So in the military, I had military mentors, ones that I was looking to. I wanted a career like theirs, right? So if I wanted a career like theirs, I would go meet with them. So now that I'm out of the military, I have several others. Right now, my mentor is a man named Dave Reaver. He's actually my boss, and he's my mentor. He is the guy that I'm looking to, I guess, continue my career right now in what I do. And what do I do? I'm a resiliency coach. I go and deliver resiliency messages to high schools, military. We work with, different nations around the world, but we also do ministry as well. So, if it's in a secular environment, then it's more of a resiliency message. But if it's in a more of a church environment, then I'm doing more of the ministry side of things. And so my boss is Dave Reaver. And one thing that he's taught me is John, that there's people out there hurting, right? So he said the difference between you and I is that our scars are visible, right? See, and the other thing Dave Reaver said is, see, a scar is evidence that you've been wounded, but it's also evidence that you got over it. But he said, John, there's other people that have scars that are actually bleeding internally, emotionally, and from trauma, things that happened when they were a kid that they never got over. He said, those scars are deadly. Those wounds are deadly. And some people haven't recovered from them yet. So that's what he's saying. He said, hey, we're after those people that are wounded, right? So the Green Beret motto was to free the oppressed. That was it. That's the motto of the Green Beret, free the oppressed. Well, Jesus said in Luke 4:18, for the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to free the oppressed. So with Dave Reaver, our job, what he's mentored me in to do is to continue to free the oppressed, to go find those people, to go reach those people that are broken, that need hope, need healing. And how am I getting through the door? I'm using my scars. I'm showing, man, I did it. I forgave the guy that shot me. How could you do that? I mean, how could you forgive someone that puts a 45 through your throat? Here's something else. I often tell people, how many times have you been wounded by people you've trusted? Right? I mean, that things like that happen. And so Dave Reaver has taught me how to use my scars to bring hope and healing to a broken world. And, like you said, people say, well, how's there a God? Look what's going on. You know why? You know why they're wondering where's God? Because he left it in our hands to manage, and we managed it wrong. So we're dealing with the consequences of bad leadership and bad management. Anyway, that's it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen a lot of your I've seen the foundation, and I see and I've read a little bit of Dave Reaver's story, and I think it's a pretty fantastic story. And I think the work that you guys do, both in schools and both in churches, is just fantastic. And I think right now, especially with a lot of things going on as far as Ukraine and things going on in the government and politics and cultural disputes. And I think right now, resiliency is what, especially people my age, is what people need right now. And that message of resiliency, I think, is very important. I think it's life-saving. It's very important, especially with the high rates of suicide and mental health now being something you see more often. I think resiliency and letting those people know that, hey, we're with you, God's with you. And it's always a thing, if God's with me, who can be against me, right? And I think a lot of people really need to understand that philosophy. Like, you got one of the most strongest, baddest, smartest people in the world, in the universe, creator of the universe, on your side. And I mean, I'm always excited to have God on my side, because I always know I can count on him. And Is there anything you would like to say to our viewers you haven't said?
No, I just, don't shy from doing the hard stuff. I mean, when I was getting ready to go to college, and I didn't go to college till I was in my 30s. I had a Delta Force operator tell me, he said he was an enlisted Ranger and then became a Delta Force operator, and good friend of mine. He's passed on now. His name's Ranger Tom Greer, Ranger Tom, right? So Tom Greer, he actually wrote a book called Kill Bin Laden. It was his Delta Force organization or detachment that was going after Bin Laden. They almost had him early on in the war, like 2002. Anyways, he said, John, you're going to travel a road that least people will travel. Not many will take this path. That's what's going to separate you from your peers. Keep going. It's going to suck. It's not going to be easy, but just keep going. And so what I want to tell people is that the road least traveled is the one that's not going to be the easy one, right? If there's a path of least resistance, then everyone's probably going to be on that road. And it's really not going to probably lead you to a desired result, or it's not going to lead you to something that's going to be really great. Sometimes you have to be a pioneer. Sometimes you have to plow through something that's never been done before. And, maybe one day we'll be watching podcasts about someone else or interviews about what they did because they chose to go after something that was in their heart and to pursue it. And they may have failed. I failed more things than I've ever succeeded at. I failed more things that I've ever succeeded at. But you know what? I'm here today standing on platforms telling people how good God is because I kept getting up, every time I fell. And that means when I was a young kid, when I was a young punk, when I became a Green Beret, as an officer, as a father, I failed at so many things, so many times. And if I would have just killed myself, if I would have just did something back then, because someone said something to me or someone posted something on Facebook or I didn't like the way they said that, or I failed that course and everybody's going to see me as just a loser. Then if I would have quit back then I wouldn't have the life I have today. It was in those failures that helped make the character of where I am today, right? I believe God used those failures also in my life because it was a way that I needed to lean on him rather than myself. See, I'm just this flesh guy, man. If you put a lot of stress on me, I'm gonna break. So what I had to do is I had to put faith in someone else other than me, and that was in Christ. And he's a solid foundation. He's a sure thing. And so when I put my faith on him, then I can go above and beyond and go to the places. But man, all I kept doing is getting up, seeking him every day. And because of that, I'm here. And God used those failures to help me build character and be the man I am today. So what am I telling everybody? The message is to get up. When it sucks, when you don't know what's going to happen, just keep getting up because tomorrow will be better. And okay, well, if tomorrow's not better, then a week from now, things will get better. Eventually, it will get better. You're only in this for a season.
Absolutely. And I think right now, especially our DMA cadets really need a message of hope right now. And I appreciate everything you said. I think everything you said was spot on, especially about the power of God and what God can do in your life. I think that's spot on. I couldn't say it better myself. Well, thank you so much, sir, for doing this, being part of this interview. I really appreciate it. I think our viewers gained a lot of information, tons of information. I think this will resonate with a lot of viewers. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Again, thanks for watching Career Connection Chats. I hope you learned something great. I hope you learned something you want to teach other people. And if you want to be on our show, please email us at careerconnectionchats@gmail.com. And if you want to ask our guest speaker your own questions, please email at the email posted below. To see more, please visit our YouTube channel and share what you've learned.